M&M listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Talk with M&M. We have a lovely guest today with us, Michael Mariani. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
I know we all worked and we're all so tired, but we made it. Michael, normally we start with a very, very simple question. If you want to go back to your memories, how far you can go and where you can remember yourself from the first memory.
That's always interesting because sometimes you get memories that you might not actually have as a memory, but maybe you see some photographs when you were very little, and that sort of makes you think that that was a memory. So, I think that probably maybe kindergarten, maybe grade school. I'm not quite sure, actually. That's not an easy. It's not a perfect I have memories from that time period. So.
And you were a good child, or you were one of those troublemakers?
I would say that I got into my share of trouble, but I don't think it was ever any serious trouble. So definitely was not a perfect child. I definitely was not a good student. I definitely was not, I didn't have sort of the perfect upbringing. There were a lot of elements that you sort of had around us that made it that we sort of were exposed to things that we probably shouldn't have been, but that's just the way it works.
Now I want to go backward and have a little introductions about Michael. We know you since, I don't know, almost 20 years, right? Yeah. We were just saying 20 years. Off and on, and then we know because your kids were taking piano and just piano lesson, right? Yeah, they were taking both of them. He has a beautiful, lovely wife, and I wish she was here too.
But I really wish that Kay was here as well, and we could talk to her too, because she's a lovely soul, and you guys are always a good example of a very beautiful, harmonious couple, and it's been beautiful watching all four of you growing throughout years and getting where you are now. But just in the low bracket. But I had a little recital with with your older son, which was he was 13 at the time.
Wow.
So so it's been we've known each other for a very long time, but we didn't get to spend a lot of time with each other. But recently, we're getting to know you a little bit better, and you're just you're a good person. You're a good person, and you have such interesting stories, and you were one of the first people that we wanted to have as a guest, so it's good to have you.
That was perfect. That was perfect. Let me just tell you about the first memory that I remember from you and your wife. Your kids had recital. They supposed to had a special or surprise for you guys. And it seems they practice a song together to play it. And they were playing. Actually, it was like a theater. And they come up with this kind of idea. And I remember that your wife was crying when they were playing.
Sure.
And you were standing so beautifully. And I was crying with your wife, too.
It was amazing. What was the name of that song?
I actually don't know the name of the song.
I have the rhythm in my head, but
I think this was the one where they did a little skit with the piano bench. And the younger one was reading the comic newspaper, and sort of he got pushed off the edge of the bed. But they did it along with playing the music, and so it was very funny. And Yeah.
Your kids are amazingly successful, lovely, and you guys did a great job. And both of them are right now. I can't believe it when you said the younger one is 28.
It's interesting because for me, I had a very broken childhood. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't sort of the normal childhood. And Kay had sort of a normal childhood, but yet when you peel back the covers, you see that it wasn't ideal. But you look at it from the outside and you say the mom and the dad, and the dad's a professor, and the two children, and da. But it was not harmonious, and there was a lot of things happening. And in my case, everything sort of just fell apart. And so by it falling apart from the outside, you'd say, oh, yeah, that's kind of a mess. So each in their own ways, they had difficulties that, made both of us, for our own reasons, really want to have, I don't want to say normal, because there really isn't any normal family situation, but I think it did make us more wanting to have a more nurturing environment. Mm-hmm. And so when I met Kay, I was 16 years old. I had originally moved out of where I lived with my mother and my sister and my brother when I was 13. And I still lived nearby, but I lived with a different family. There was just a lot of things happening that made that make sense at the time. And I ended up leaving completely and going from near San Diego to San Francisco when I was just turned 16. And so that was a big deal. Obviously, I was by myself. I was on my own. I met Kay, and we were friends. And I think when I look back at that, what I realize very clearly now, but at the time I had no clue, is what I was really wanting in my life was something I didn't have, which was a stable, loving environment. And in this case, it would be, my partner, who became my wife. But anything, really, if I think about it, probably anything, that would have made that situation something that I craved, that I don't think I really knew at the time that that's what I craved. And so what we did was we built a life together. And that literally was, for me, having stability in my life was the thing that really was good. And so with Kay, it was very different. Kay was older, and now it's not as critical that she's older. But when she was 22, graduating college, and she started to see a 16-year-old boy who had dropped out of high school, the optics of that are not so good. You're like, what the heck? But we both sort of seem to have the same things in mind, or whatever. So that was very unusual. But when you talk about our family now, we have these two boys, and I think that I know for sure that without Kay, that would not exist the way it exists now. I think Kay really put a lot of, and what's interesting is that, Kay she doesn't naturally just not a mother, right? What Kay does is she digs in and figures it out. And what Kay does well is she reads books. So what she did, she literally studied how to be a parent. She read books and she would share things. And I remember many a times where some situation was happening with our children, and she would say, well, let me explain to you what I think this is. Let me, and the types of things she read, whether it was Brazelton or Penelope Leach, these are all, people who wrote about parenting, about the child growing up in the different periods of time and what was happening. So I think that that obviously played a huge factor in the raising of the kids. For me, I think what happened was, and I didn't realize this till later when Stephen wrote something about me, because I went off to work. I was a very traditional, which doesn't really, traditional, like old school traditional, Dad goes off to work, mom stays with the kids, and mom and Kay was super involved with their schools. She was like a volunteer librarian. She was involved with all the PTA stuff and was all the different, held all the different positions, very, very involved in their schools. That played a huge part in how they grew up. But the thing that Stephen wrote about probably in high school was that he got the work ethic, right? And we would do something that we learned in a movie somewhere that we would do what's called highs and lows. And I heard an interview recently with the ex-CEO of Yahoo, a woman, and she talked about the exact same thing. And I can't remember what they called it. They had a different name for it, but they did the same thing. And so every night at dinner, which, by the way, we made a point of having dinner every night together. We were not going to be one of the families that everybody's running off and doing their thing. And we pretty much had dinner every night through high school for them, their whole upbringing. And we did highs and lows. So what's highs and lows? Well, what's your high today? What's your low today? What did you learn today? And what we got from that was some great conversations, but also what they got was they got to hear about our day. And a lot of times that had to do with me and my work and the frustrations that I had and some of the people. And so it was kind of unvarnished in a way. They didn't get a sort of a rosy picture all the time of what work was like and what it was like to be out there doing that. And so Stephen wrote for something during high school about how he got that from me. And I think both of them acknowledged that they just realized that it's, you got to get up and go every day. It doesn't, you don't want to do it, but you got to do it. It's just, this is what you do for your family. This is what you do. So that was interesting. And also the other thing that I found interesting was they were very involved in politics, in student government. They did the YMCA student government. They did student government in school. They both had positions. Matter of fact, Stephen was senior class president at the high school. Ian was treasurer when he was a senior, and Stephen was a freshman when Ian was a senior. So I think he kind of got the bug from his brother to do that. And I remember they would go off to this camp every year, and Stephen came home one time. It's always funny how they have these revelations, right? So Stephen came home and he said, most of the conversations, by the way, I get secondhand, right? They're very open with their mom. They have great communication. And they don't always, we talk, but mostly with their mom. And so she was telling me how Stephen related to her, that he was in this camp with all these other kids, and he realized listening to these other kids talk about all of the drama that was going on in their family with their parents and the parents' own drama, et cetera. And he realized, wow, I guess I'm kind of lucky. We don't have a lot of drama in our house, right? And we don't. I mean, we are normal. We have arguments. We have disagreements. Definitely, that's not like we're, it's all peaches and cream all the time. But in general, we're respectful. And I think that right there says a lot about how the kids were raised. And it's funny because that could be applied to anything in life. The thing that I'm most familiar with, doing a lot of surfing over the last years, you have a phrase that says, you go out and paddle out in the water, and if this is some new place for you and there's sort of the guys, the locals they call them, the guys that are there all the time, you don't just paddle up and catch a wave when those guys are out there waiting for a wave. That's extremely disrespectful. So the phrase is you have to give respect to get respect. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting because it's not about surfing. It's about life, right? If you respect your children, they should respect you back. But if you don't respect your children, which we see it all the time, where parents seem to think that they cannot respect their kids, and somehow they believe that it's their right to be respected back by those children, and that's just not the way it works. You might think it's the way it works, and it'll work when they're 7. It might even work when they're 10. But by the time they get to 12, 13, and older, it's going to come back to bite you because you haven't given them the respect. And so for me, that's one of the lessons that I learned. Kay is, again, I give Kay most of the credit for how well they turned out, how balanced they turned out. And to be clear, that's not perfect. We've had, we've all had our issues, and everybody has their things that they go through. But when it comes to parenting, I got very, very lucky in my partner because she's been very serious about that job that she had. It was her number one job. And again, add to that, how fortunate are we that we had the opportunity for Kay to be able to do that, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have that. Most people don't have that opportunity. Two people need to work to make ends meet. So I think it would, and that's just dumb luck. And I work hard. I admit that, but a lot of it is luck. And I stumbled into a situation where that hard work was recognized, and I managed to move through the company because it was recognized. And it was just the right timing. There was just some timing that happened that allowed for that.
Can we say that she kind of sacrificed her job?
Absolutely.
And what she studied.
Absolutely.
She studied to become.
She's a lawyer.
She's a lawyer.
She went to Berkeley. She did 4 years undergrad, poli-sci, graduated, worked for a couple years. Went back to Berkeley Law, which, Berkeley Law is one of the top 5 law schools in the country. Mm-hmm. So it's not an easy thing to get into. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is Kay has told the story where, when she was in high school, it was easy. Straight A's, no problems, right? When she got to college, still pretty good, straight A's. By the time she got to law school, things started to get hard. And she realized what was happening was at each level, you were peeling away the people who weren't cutting it. And by the time you got to Berkeley Law, what you were left with was pretty smart people. And she struggled. She graduated, which means she has her Juris Doctorate, her JD. And then in order to practice law, you have to pass the bar exam, which is another whole hurdle, right?
And she did.
First time. Passed it the first time.
Wow.
And then she didn't practice law.
Oh, wow.
So she went into legal writing. But she said, I never really wanted to be a lawyer. So I figure, okay, I did no college. She did 7 years of college. So we'll average that out. We each did 3.5 years on average. So I think that what you just said is, at times, I think it is troubling, because she always assumed she would be a career person. She always thought that she would be working. And so as the kids grew up, it was great. She had a purpose. She took care of that. But as the kids left, I think that became problematic. And I'm not saying problematic like it's horrible, she can't get out of bed, that kind of thing, but it definitely weighs on her at times where she realizes that. But what I remind her was, okay, so jobs, right? I had a job, I went to work, I did the job. What was your job? Your job was raising those boys. Most important job in the world. And let me tell you, she did an amazing job. Mm-hmm. So you can think of it as, I missed out on whatever your career, quote unquote. But if your most important job is to raise productive human beings that are good human beings, she did that job really well.
Exactly. Yeah. And she raised. I mean, it's really difficult to see. It's difficult to see that. She had to sacrifice that to achieve that. But she raised 2 phenomenal young guys that are just doing extra amazing work in the world and adding to the society, to the positive side of what our society needs. So she can see the future that she wanted to have through them, but it's still difficult for mothers who have to do that for the kids. But I wish she was here so we could talk to her about.
Well, the thing about Kay, you guys, it's funny that you guys have said that, because she would never participate in this. No, it's just not her.
I actually asked her last time.
She's very shy and just would never.
She's
so we're just gonna
totally humble.
We're just going to praise her as she's humble.
So some friends of ours recently told us about a book they listened to while they were on a drive, and the book is about introverts and extroverts.
And
that was our
discussion.
The wife was the extrovert, and the husband was the introvert. And in our relationship, it's the opposite, right? I'm absolutely the extrovert, and she's the introvert. And it has worked out well for us, mostly. So I mean, we meet people that probably we would never meet if I wasn't there, because I'm talking to everybody and asking questions and because I'm curious, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, to be curious. There was a great podcast by the current CEO of Lowe's. Mm-hmm. He's an African American. He's from a farm. His father was a farmer in Mississippi or South Carolina, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right? And he was a security guard at Target. Now, how do you go from being a security guard at Target
Become
to
a
the
CEO.
CEO of Lowe's? How do you do that? And what he said in that podcast was he was intellectually curious. And I thought, oh my God, I love that phrase. That's exactly the phrase. That's what I am. I am intellectually curious, right? I mean, life is short. Let's learn everything we can possibly
I feel
learn.
you so bad.
And you just, read books and discover things and yeah. So it was.
There
I
is
thought it was
nothing enough for you ever. There is no satisfaction, and I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I am, because I never get enough of knowing. And every day when I get up, my desire and my dream is to know one more person, one new thing.
Yeah.
And that is just giving me a joy of, it's like my engine.
Right, but what's funny, if I remember correctly from our last conversation, was you're the extrovert.
Yes.
And your sister is the introvert.
Yes.
Right? And she's okay. She doesn't need to know more people. She's happy with who she knows.
I just learn through observation.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I actually know a lot of people, but
Well,
they don't know that I know them.
You know what's really great? One of those things we've been talking about is the boys. And Ian just got married.
Yes.
And he asked his brother to be his best man. Exactly, right? As a parent, that's what you want. And so the best man has to give a speech. So Stephen gave a speech, and it was really funny. Everybody was roaring. But it really was the typical younger brother speech. And what's ironic is that the wife, Ian's new wife, is also the older sister. Oh. And she has one younger sister. Okay? And Stephen gave his speech first. And then when Molly got up to do her speech.
It was hijacked.
Yeah, exactly. She said, oh my God, he just gave my speech, right? And their stories were so similar that they were sort of in the shadow of their older sibling. And what reminded me was when Marzi said observation, because that's what Stephen was talking about in his speech, was as the younger brother, he got to observe his older brother. And the way he wrote the speech, which was very funny, was, he got to learn from his brother's mistakes. So it's that thing, you say monkey see, monkey do. And Stephen said, and sometimes it's monkey see, monkey don't do. Right? So it was very funny. Everybody was laughing. But yeah, so observing, that's
exactly. I mean, usually that's a pattern of the rhythm of who's the younger kid, who's the older kid. And then if there's more than two, the whole pattern changes with the middle child, but usually that's the pattern.
And it's just the two of you guys, right?
It's just the two of us, yeah. So yeah, the first ones, the firstborns experience everything, and then the second child usually observes and see which direction I shouldn't go and which direction I can go.
And I think a lot of times with parents, you're very cautious with the first one, and you're less so with the second because you've been through it now, and you're a little bit less, go play on the street, that kind of thing. It's okay. And then in Stephen's speech, he did talk about the thing that upset his older brother was that he got access to things. I don't remember the exact grade, but you know what? I got a flip phone when I was like in 8th grade, and Ian had to wait till he was in high school or something like that.
Or even social emotional things. You kind of get more access because the parents are a little bit more relaxed. They have the experience. They know that it's okay. They're going to survive. I can give them that freedom to go. And it's difficult. It's kind of...
Yeah, the older one is like, wait a minute. I had to wait. Why doesn't she have to wait? That's not fair. Yep. Yeah, life isn't fair.
Exactly.
And you try to do what I did, and you thought it was a mistake because I was so under. Nobody couldn't control me, and she was trying to not to be me, to be a good girl, because I was always the troublemakers. And I think that's exactly it is with the second child. They see that the first one is doing a lot of mistakes, and parents are getting angry, frustrated, and there's a lot of drama.
Yeah,
and then,
you see the pattern of family, and you try to adjust yourself to do better, and you just become the.
Yep.
There was one funny family story where Ian. he was a very good student. Stephen was a better student. And what I mean by that is that he was better organized. And, Stephen was the guy who always had the thing done a week before it was supposed to be done. That was Stephen, right? And Ian, not so much. But Ian was a good student. Look where Ian is. He's been great. He went through college. He's fine. But there was a moment, middle school maybe, and Ian was having trouble doing his homework, and at one point he indicated that he had done the homework, but he hadn't actually done the homework. So, long story short, he had to have some sort of repercussion. So what we did was we took away his computer use, which is funny. I've been doing computers since I was a teenager. So the kids grew up with computers. I always had computers around the house, so they played games and had their computers. So we took away his computer. And years later, Stephen said, "Do you remember that time in middle school when you took Ian's computer away?" Yeah, he said, "That had a profound effect on me." Oh. And it's why he always got everything done, because he didn't want to get his computer taken away. And so it was a motivator for the younger one to say, well, I don't want that. So, so that was a way for him. Yeah, it's interesting in retrospect, because we didn't know.
Exactly. And it's not always necessarily good, because sometimes, I don't know how he is, but sometimes I missed out on some stuff that I wanted to do because I didn't want it to get into the same trouble that she did. So yeah, it kind of those patterns of the family dynamic is very interesting. And then I was gonna mention the amazing work that Ian's doing these days, and so if you like to talk about him as well, if you like, because I don't know if
Ian studied diplomacy and world affairs at Occidental College, which, by the way, that was a college that Barack Obama went to early in his college. I think he went there for a year, and then he transferred to Columbia in New York. But when we went to the parents' thing where they want to, woo you into having your kid go to this college, there was a presentation, and we were in the auditorium or whatever, and they put the White House up on a picture of the White House, and they said, if you go here, the sky's the limit. The implication was if you go here, you could become president. Right? So he did diplomacy and world affairs, which is a lot of politics, foreign policy, things like that. And so his first job out of college was a company in Pasadena, which was very near the college. So he moved to Pasadena, and they're a political marketing firm. So, something that we have nowadays. And I remember asking him, what do you do? And he said, well, that those things when the elections come around and, you get those things in the mail. And I said, yeah, I know that. Is it okay if I don't tell people what you do? Right? Because we all kind of hate all this mail that you get, on Prop 24 and all this stuff that comes in the mail. So he worked for them, and their claim to fame was they had done both of Barack Obama's campaigns. And so, and then he really wanted to go to D.C. And so what he ended up doing was he decided he was just going to go. Mm-hmm. Didn't have a job. And so he went to D.C., he got a job as a barista, and then he tried to figure it out. And so he learned from somebody else that you got to have, it was a catch-22 situation. You got to have some experience to get the job, but you can't get the job without some experience. But how do you get the experience if you don't get the job? So what you do is you volunteer. Mm-hmm. So he started doing some volunteer work for some senators. I can't remember exactly. I know at one point he was working for a gentleman by the name of Steny Hoyer, which is like the number 3 Democrat, and he has quite a large staff. So he did that work, and then he ended up getting a job doing some communications work for a New Jersey congressman. Josh, can't remember Josh's last name, and. So he did that, and that was his first job. And so I think it might have been 3 months he was unemployed, where he was there unemployed. And then
that was very short time.
Yeah.
He then got a job with working for a woman who's a Democrat from New York who was in charge of the Appropriations Committee. So again, kind of a larger staff. So he was working for her, but really he was working for the Appropriations Committee. Doing that work. And then he got a job with a woman from Des Moines, Iowa, and Cindy Axney. And both Josh and Cindy were what they call blue Democrats. So what that is a blue dog Democrats. And what that is they're a Democrat, but they're in a red district. So you're kind of vulnerable, and you really need to be
Wow.
paying attention. And first of all, their job is to take care of the constituents. So that's their job, whether the constituents are Democrat or Independent or Republican. But anyway, the Congress people get reelected every 2 years, so it's pretty tough. You're just like constantly in this cycle, So he got a job with her. And then he decided, you know what, I think I'm going to do something else. So he started to think about doing something else, looking for some other stuff. He put some feelers out, but he also realized he needed to kind of draw a line where when you hit that line, you got to stay, because you're going to have an election, and it would be very unfair to be leaving your boss when an election was coming up. So he's like, all right, I'm going to start looking, but I'm going to stop at this point. And he didn't quite get to that point, but he kind of stopped. It's like, okay, I'm staying. And then he got a call from somebody who knew him, I think, from the company in Pasadena, and worked with him there. And that guy was the chief of staff of a congressman by the name of Salud Carbajal. And at that time, his district was Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Santa Maria, part of Paso Robles, just north of Ventura. But because they redistrict every 10 years based on the census, the new district would be Ventura and Ojai. Well, isn't that ironic? So
That's
now he got hired as the communications director for Salud Carbajal, who's our congressman as of this January.
That's very interesting.
So it's very cool, because now what happens is Ian spends most of his time in Washington. But when there's a recess, like there just was, the congressman will come to the district so he can go around the district and interact with the constituents, and so Ian comes with him. So Ian was just here with his boss. He worked and he stays at our house. Ian, not the congressman. Ian stays at our house while he's doing his work. So one of the things he had to do was they had to go to the fair, and they meet with the 38th Agriculture District, which is the people who run the fair. And they didn't go on any rides, but they did go and see the auction. They got to meet with the fair officials, and they got to watch. Ian said, we watched them auction off a turkey for $1,700. Who pays $1,700 for a turkey, or $1,300? There's a lot of money for a turkey. And so it's very nice for us because he's here, right? He's at home for the time. So that's pretty cool. And so he told me the other day he's starting to do a little bit of legislature. So the way it works is they have sort of two parts to the office. You have sort of the communications team, and then you have the legislative team. And the legislative team is a bunch of young people. They're all young people because they work them really hard. Yeah. And those people, their job is to sort of research the topics that the congressman, to help the congressperson sort of decide, what they need to vote, how they need to vote for certain things. So there might be banking. I think that's what Ian's working on. He's doing a little bit of research on the banking and finance. So things like cryptocurrency and trying to regulate crypto and some of those things. And then his main job is to be in charge of all the communications. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I could say this, but he when he was here last, he left papers behind to basically be recycled. And being a parent, of course, you're going to stalk your children. So Kay was reading these, and she said it's fascinating. He's writing the speeches for the guy.
Oh,
right. And so and
I
here
was going
are his,
to ask you.
Here are his notes with all the scratch marks and the all the stuff. And yeah, it's pretty wild, right? So they work together. It's not he's not completely ghostwriting it for the congressman, but he is writing the information. A lot of what you hear and see is he's writing it.
Yeah, most of them have the speechwriter.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's totally
that's it.
Yeah, so it's it's pretty cool.
Oh my God, I want to give a big shout out to Ian. I miss you, man, and I'm so proud of him. And congrats on his wedding. But every time I see, because we see just tiny little bits of what he's working on, and I just feel so proud of just.
Now I'm going to say something, because something I learned from my partner, and is that Stephen is doing some amazing things, and I don't want to make it seem like Ian. What I've learned in parenting from Kay, and it's an important rule, is you really want to be careful that you don't favor one child, any child over another child. It's something that people do without even realizing that they're doing it. So Ian's great. He's doing good. Really proud of him. But equally so, Stephen has
I was just gonna
created
ask
a
about
career
him.
that is amazing. And he works for the PUC. The PUC is, I think it's 6 commissioners that are appointed. And the commissioners then have staffs that do research and help them with whatever they're doing. So Hawaii is trying to go green energy by, I think they have the fastest timeline of any state, right? And I don't know exactly what it is, but let's say they want to be 100% green by 2035, which is really fast, right? They may not make that. But the PUC regulates the utilities, so that's their job to sort of push the utilities. So Stephen is quite, involved. And what's interesting is he did some speaking before the Hawaii State Legislature. And they have like a C-SPAN, so we watched it and we recorded it. We have photo. We took snapshots of the photos, of Stephen. And what's really cool, what I like about Stephen is he has a very dry wit, And so he was explaining something to one of the senators, I would guess, senators and state senators, and it got kind of complicated what he was explaining, and what he was explaining was sort of like the whole rebate process or something, but it was so funny the way he realized after explaining it for a couple minutes that, well, this is like really complicated, right? So he kind of smiled and he tried to like re-explain it in maybe a simpler way, but he just has this really cool dry wit. Super wicked smart. They're both wicked smart. But he also has, parlayed. He's just done a great job with his career as well. And I think he's sitting pretty good where he can, pretty much call the shots where he goes next. He's done 3 different jobs within the energy sector, and he's worked for a company that worked for the utilities. He worked for a utility company, and now he works for the agency that regulates the utility company. So he's got a really broad, and I would guess he's been in Hawaii now for a couple of years. I would guess over the next maybe 5 years at the most, he'll probably come back. That's my thinking, wishful thinking of a parent. But he's 3,000 miles away. So, so he's doing great, and he has taken full advantage of where he lives. So Stephen was in the Netherlands for a while. He studied there, and I think some of the Dutch culture rubbed off on him. Ian is more like me. He's very workaholic, right? I mean, he's just, oh my God, I try to give him a hard time, but I realize I don't have a leg to stand on because I have always been a very hard worker, and that's not always been the best thing. And as you get older, you realize, okay, nobody on their deathbed said, man, I wish I worked more, right? So Stephen is more balanced. So Stephen, surfs. That's great. And Ian does stuff too. He plays tennis. He's been, he does stuff, but I think Stephen works hard. I don't want to make it sound like Stephen doesn't work hard.
No, but he has that balance.
But he's cognizant. He's more cognizant of like, you know what? I'm gonna, and I wish I were more like him because that is how I want to be, and I want to try to be more like that. Even with my current job now, it's just work and work, work. And so I have respect for Stephen, and I love the fact that he takes advantage of the fact that he lives in Hawaii. So he does surfing, of course. He and his girlfriend are huge surfers, but also rock climbing, hiking. He's just always, out and doing stuff. And
that is amazing.
He
I
does
love
free
it.
diving.
We never get a chance. We never got a chance to actually get to know him. And last time I saw him, he was 8 or 9.
Yeah, right.
But we only kind of witnessed their
growing up,
and the amazing things that they're doing in life just from far away. But that's the testament to what you were just saying, that you and Kay worked on, and all the sacrifices that Kay made. It made these two.
Yeah, they're great kids, and his parents
giving back to.
Why do you want to? Yeah, why do you want to have kids?
Exactly.
You want to have. It's
and that's amazing. It's
I was going to ask you about Stephen. Like, have you ever thought that maybe he's considering to run sometimes, or be in a different positions, or no? This is what he's going to
When you say run, are you referring to like
Anything.
a campaign or politics?
Just be.
Or do you mean like running on the street in his tennis shoes? Which, by the way, he ran a marathon,
I know that. No.
right? Crazy, right? Who
No,
runs a marathon,
running in
right?
the politics.
Right.
Getting like more into the serious and more visible.
Oh, Stephen or Ian?
Ian, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be
Yeah,
either.
I said-
it could be
It
either.
could
at
be- it
this
could be
point.
either.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
That's true.
No, I think he's made it. That question has come up before, and he's made it pretty clear that he's not
He's
interested
not.
in that. Right? It's
Oh.
it. He says something like, "I've seen how the sausage is made. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be."
Like,
You know, I mean, he's very much a part of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And maybe that's part of it is, when you realize you're the one making it happen.
yeah.
This is just the
Exactly.
person who, is the face of this, because it's not just Ian, it's the whole team that works for the
Exactly.
It is.
congressperson, but still.
That's usually what's happening. Sorry, in politics, people who are behind the scene are running the show,
Right.
And there are some people that are the face of the. I mean, I don't want to be controversial, but that's usually what's happening.
Yeah, that's
It's
not
like
controversial.
movies.
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
People knows the face of the actor and actresses, but the people that they make the movie, who's writing it, who is like
Sure.
who's just doing the video, like editing sounds, like. But most of the people, like, they don't even know them because they're not curious, like, to see who is doing this part of the movie. All mostly they know is the face of who's playing. And I think that's what it is in the politics.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you one thing because we only have about.
And don't
10
worry, we
minutes
can
or
just,
so.
stop like at 45 and then we go.
Oh,
Yeah?
Okay, so
Right?
maybe we can stop right now and then continue. So we're making it a 2-episoder.
How much
If you have
time do
You
another
guys are in
45
charge.
minutes in you.
No, do you have
That's
time?
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're going to stop here and then we'll come back for the section.
Tune in for part 2.
Yeah.